Hey everybody, this is John from Cubic Labs, Quincy's tech startup incubator, and today I'm here with one of our members, Winston Daley, and he's going to tell you a little bit about himself and his startup, Agogos. So I guess the first question really, Winston, is where does that name come from, and maybe could you explain it to me?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Well, John, first, thank you for having me here and having me be a member of Cubic Labs. So excited to get started. So Agogos, kind of a quirky name, thought it would have a good ring to it. It comes from the original Greek meaning leaders or leading, and it also comes from, has been joined with pedagogy, meaning leader of children, which has now been used to be synonymous with teachers, which is the focus of Agogos and my startup.
Very cool. And what problem are you trying to solve with Agogos?
So Agogos, to distill it down to just a couple of sentences, it is a platform built to connect teachers of color with school districts and also with each other. It is, so what has happened for me is in the last few years, my work has chiefly been in nonprofits, in the community, and also community organizing with nonprofits and also parents around the education, access, and equity for Black and Brown youth. So one of the common refrains that I've gotten from when we work with school districts or superintendents of that, it is very hard for them to connect with educators of color. They sort of lack the network, sort of the outreach. You know, people in schools are really focused on education and students. So I said, what if I build a digital platform that sort of brought some innovation to the space of hiring and education? So the point of Agogos is that now our educators of color can create these great digital portfolios and profiles that school districts can now just go out and search. It is a constant database where if I'm looking for an ELA teacher in Louisville, Kentucky, I can go out and just search and say, I'm looking for these educators and they're there. And I go out and immediately able to start a conversation with them and look into bringing them into my district. And then on the other side, it's also a community of practice for these educators, where educators of color now have a place where they can meet each other, support, share, talk about pedagogy, curriculum, and it's a great place for development, is also spreading the love of teaching and education, which hopefully will increase the pipeline of teachers in the future.
Love that. And you know, I think there's a real interesting thing going on there too. You know, if you don't have the right or what we call traditional CV, you know, you mightn't get a second look. Whereas to me, it sounds like what you're saying is this is an opportunity for educators of color to showcase their energy and experience in a digital fashion, and basically show why they're worth a look. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's space for a more dynamic presentation of an educator. Educators of color will more often have non-traditional backgrounds. So now Agogos is a place where you can really highlight what you are in the classroom. If you want to add some digital media, multimedia, if you want to put in your curriculum and also what you've done in the classroom, you can really present what you bring to the class, which does not show up on a traditional sort of point and click resume submission or a paper submission. And unfortunately, in our education system, there are often districts that are working on more analog systems. There's not been a lot of innovation in how do we find new teachers to come into our space. And in 2020, which has been a big year in the discussion of equity, the discussion of racism, the discussion of voices and who's elevated. And so we don't have a space where now if I'm a district and I've said I'm dedicated to looking at my staff and seeing that I have demographic changes, I have needs in my teaching staff amongst diversity, but how do I find these teachers? I may not have the networks. Education systems tend to be a little parochial. They're a little more insular. If you grew up somewhere, you're more likely to teach there. There's not a lot of reach. So Agogos is trying to be that national reach, that national connection for schools to find teachers of color anywhere.
And you know what? It's kind of a shout out to the institutions that kind of, you know, there's a lot of corporate PR going on at the moment about we can't find people to hire, so on and so forth. And you're kind of saying, no, it's here. This is a very practical solution to the problem. If you want to find these people to hire, it's on this platform, correct?
Yeah, I think what Agogos provides is a more proactive solution. It's I think that many places are dedicated to these changes, but they don't have the tools or the services to really do it. So if you do want to find these educators and you're in a place where they're not historically numerous, how do you find them? How do you change your database? How do you change your network? How do you change the way you look at your school district, your curriculum, your entire way of going about business when you've been working in one system for decades? So now Agogo says that, we're hoping to take away the excuses of we don't know how to find them. When we can say, well, I've got thousands of them on this platform. You can reach out to them any time of day and find them and talk to them about your school district and tell them, hey, come in and talk, have this conversation with us. And also on the other side, these educators have a place where they can now work with each other. There's, aside from the PD days in schools, when do educators get the time to share with each other, the time to meet folks across the country who are working in the same spaces and share materials and curriculum?
That's very cool. And like, what stage are you at in terms of the genesis of this product?
Well, that's the thing, right? So in the startup, I am very early stage. We're coming out of the idea stage, still doing a lot of market value validation, talking to as many people in education as possible, and also in very early development. So right now in the development stage, trying to get to that point and click the first initial rollout of the website where we can bring our users on and have them sort of be that first test case of going in, creating a profile, meeting with each other, sharing and telling us really what they would like to see. So we're very early stage there in terms of the idea has legs, and now you've got to build it.
Awesome. And I love the kind of, build it and they'll come. You're telling everyone, this is what I'm going to do, and now you're going to go and do it. Is there anything you've learned? I know you just kind of stepped up into the startup world yourself, coming from corporate. What have you learned, or what are your observations just having done that?
Well, my first observation is the amount of networking that it takes. And I think that links really well to the project I'm building. I think a lot of the idea of me building Agogos comes from my own path in my initial career in finance and financial services, transitioning out of that career into another, and the level of networking and contacts that you needed just to get your foot in the door. The amount of people I've spoken to in education who I, did not know 6 months ago, who've been incredibly useful and incredibly, just supportive in the project has been amazing. But without being able to get on the ground and make the calls, make the emails, get on a number of Zooms in a day. So really for me, it's been the level of networking and getting folks to buy in. The more people and the more support I get for the idea and myself, it's picked up steam. And I have no doubt that once we're able to build and bring the product to folks, that it'll be successful because of the number of people I've spoken to and people who have really bought in and said, this is something that we're really interested in. So I think that's been the biggest part. Early on, haven't had the battle end of the issues with funding yet. That'll be another step. But right now, I think the networking has been the biggest part.
Sorry, complete brain fart.
No problem.
Who are the people you need to be talked to at the moment to move this on? I assume you're trying to build that community first. And so, like, is it educators of color? Is there specific people that you're looking to have conversations with?
It's everyone in education. It's educators of color who will be our main users to start, the folks who are going to build and validate our community to start. It's folks who are in HR and the hiring space of education, who may be folks from any number of backgrounds, people who are looking for our users, folks who are saying, I need 9 or 10 teachers a year. I would love to use your resource as a place to find a new pool of educators. And what we're trying to be is sort of the pond where all the fish swim, and you can come and find them, right? The other side of that is also going to be getting to the pipeline, talking to our universities and the folks that are educating our young people that are coming into the space. With the pandemic, we now have 2 years of college graduates that are going to be looking for careers. So you're going to need to tap into those young folks who are looking for a new path, and hopefully education is one of those paths that they would like to choose. So those are the main points for us: is our educators of color who are already in there, maybe they're in mid-career, maybe they're older in their career. We're hiring folks in superintendents, principals, our HR people in education, and our young people recently coming out of school looking for that next step in their career.
You know what? I think one of the reasons I think I love the idea too is just my own brief history working in schools. I think it's important for students to interact with teachers that look like them or had their experiences. And I think, we're at a very relevant time for these conversations and solutions like this. I see that picture over your left shoulder. A lot of things have changed, but a lot of things have stayed the same. And so I love the fact that we're using digital technology and digital systems to kind of create a new way to tackle some of these systemic problems.
Yeah, your point is well taken. And one of the phrases that I've gotten from so many educators that I've worked with and spoken to is the idea of classrooms and children having mirrors, being able to see themselves and the person across from them, and seeing folks in leadership positions and teaching positions that look like them and saying, oh, these are ideas, these are things that I can do. And that's one of the goals of Agogos, is sharing more pathways in life and more opportunities. You know, it has been shown, you can look at statistics anywhere, and it says that all students of all races, colors, and creeds do better when they have a diverse teaching staff, when they have a diverse pool of folks who are influencing them, that they are not allowed to just sort of go with one straight line of thinking, that they are challenged with a more diverse curriculum, with different ideas. And really, and that's what Agogos is. It's bringing these educators and their dynamic styles and their dynamic backgrounds and their dedication to education to more spaces and having more access and more power.
That's very, very interesting. And, you know, I know, particularly having worked in an inner city background too, one of the things I found is that it's also a barrier to, sometimes trust can be an issue, particularly from kids that have had a tough background. And sometimes, you know, it can be a barrier to trust, have someone that is completely different from you or has a completely different background. And any little thing we can do to break down those barriers to help some of these kids is important. This is really interesting stuff, Winston, and I understand that you're kind of you're basically kind of trying to bring the product to market and build this thing up now. But there's a huge amount of stuff to be fleshed out here, and I know that this product is going to evolve as you move forward. So we're really happy to be part of this with Cubic Labs. We're very happy to kind of have a really very cool civ tech idea like this, and we're expecting to see big things from you over the next couple of months and years. So fingers crossed, and keep hitting those milestones.
John, I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be a part of Cubic. So happy to work with yourself and Ian. And I'll just say, you know, to add on to what you just said about students seeing folks and them being pushed and being challenged. I think it's also important at the administrative level. I think it's important that we're talking about educators of color as principals, as vice principals, as your superintendents, people that are really driving the future of education, that these voices are heard and amplified, and not just in terms of the students. There are many things that need to change in terms of pedagogy and curriculum, and things that need to be influenced, and things that need to have different people at the table. I think the phrase "seat at the table" has been used, you know, a lot in the last few years, but it's incredibly important. And I'm hoping that Agogos can be a platform and a tool and a service to all these folks, these great folks in education.
Let's make it so, Winston. Thank you very much, and until next time.
All right, thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.